Life is really all about making choices, isn't it? And when you're going through your reinvention after divorce, sometimes those choices can seem even more difficult, maybe even impossible. And that's why I'm so excited to share today's guest on Real RAD Women with you. Phoenix faced some truly incredible choices when she was going through her reinvention after divorce. In fact, her choices seemed downright wrong in the eyes of some of the people around her, some of the people closest to her. But Dawn knew, and this is what she's going to share with us today, Dawn knew what was best, not only for herself, but on the people that her choices directly impacted. So I want you to listen to Dawn's message because she talks about how that is so important. There's a lot of noise when you're going through your reinvention, and you need to know where to truly focus and listen. So join me today while we listen to the story of Dawn Phoenix.
Dawn Phoenix! Dawn, welcome so much to Real RAD Women. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm happy to be here.
How's the weather over there in Savannah, Georgia today?
Well, it's green and about 80, so can't complain.
I'm so super jealous. So obviously you and I just had a little preamble. We are recording this in mid-October and I am wearing layers and I am covered from the neck to the toe because it's 30 degrees here. So it's always really nice for me to talk to people who are in warm places to just kind of vicariously live through your temperatures.
I'll send you some heat through the camera.
I'm feeling it already. I'm feeling the radiance. So Dawn, we recently met and I just absolutely was so taken in by your story that you shared with me that I'm so happy to have you here because I think that you have a message that you can share with other women who are going through their divorce experience, whether they're in the middle of it right now or if they're past it, but they're still obviously in that state of living life after divorce. You've done some incredible things and made some amazing choices in your life that are so incredible because you did what you know was right for you and for everyone else. And I would love for you to just kind of share, tell us a little bit about how you got to, okay, this is a big question, but how'd you get to Savannah, Georgia?
Okay. Well, it started sort of in Colorado, by way of Colorado. In 2016, I had my first divorce, and I was living there at the time with my first husband and my son. And I was not financially prepared to be living on my own, but I needed the divorce to happen anyway and did not realize how unprepared I was. So that led me shortly after that divorce into my second marriage with a guy who I had known for a couple of years who said, "Oh, you can come live with me and you don't need to pay rent and you'll have your own room and your own bathroom." Well, I had no life insurance. I had no income of my own at the time because I had been a stay-at-home mom for my son. So I had no cushion, and apartments don't take alimony as income. So we ended up getting married. And he said, "I want to take care of you and you'll have health insurance through my company that he works for." And then it was all going to be fabulous. And a year and a half later, he decided to choose a behavior that I could not live with and ended up living in a shelter for survivors of domestic violence. And a week later, I served him divorce papers and got a restraining order because when I said to him a couple days after, I had said to him, "Could you move out for a month? And just so I can get my stuff out of here, close down, the practice I was trying to get up and running with hypnotherapy. It was a brick and mortar practice, and just let me get my stuff together to get out of here. That's all I want to do is just leave." And he looked at me and he said, "As long as I'm paying the mortgage, I'm staying here. and I could not be in the same home as him. So I ended up in the shelter, and I couldn't stay there long term either. It's not a very conducive place to flourishing as a person. So I ended up working through the shelter with an attorney who was wonderful and worked pro bono to get me the restraining order. And she was a blessing, and she actually ended up becoming my divorce lawyer. Which was not pro bono, but she still was really wonderful. And I don't know where I'd be without her.
God, if you can find a pro bono divorce lawyer, let me know, because I
Right?
think people out there, I don't know if that exists. If it does, let us know, because it's a great resource that people who really need one should find. But that's no shadiness to lawyers, but that's just
no, everybody needs to, get paid. So.
Yeah, exactly. We all have a living to earn. So that when you were making those choices, I mean, those are big, important moves that are so integral to you and where you're going. I mean, to recognize that you needed to get out of that situation, and you had a lot against you in that case. The fact that he wasn't working with you, the fact that he was not treating you well, and that you needed to take these measures. How did you have support, or how did you find your strength to even to move out, to go to the shelter, and to seek the resources?
It all happened so fast. It's kind of a weird story, but I'm into spirituality, not necessarily a religion kind of a thing, but the spirituality kind of a thing, meditation, things like that. And it's a big part of my life, my practice. So the night that the incident occurred, I had issues sleeping and had this dream where I had actually support from just somebody who showed up in my dream. And they said to me, "This is wrong. You need to get out of here." And so that was just the universe speaking to me, a different version of myself or something like that. And so I woke up that morning, and that's how I ended up in the shelter. I called the police, and they came to the house and, talked to me and got an advocate to bring me to the shelter and everything. So it was, there was that. And then when I was able to come back home, and I was dealing in that, I was in there for about a week. When I was able to come back home, I realized I had PTSD. And actually, the person who got me through that was my first ex-husband, because we were able to save our friendship. We were best friends at the beginning before we got married, and we're married for 15 years, and actually were able to save our friendship, because that's what the divorce, the purpose of it was. The marriage couldn't be saved, but we wanted to save that friendship. So he talked me down almost literally off of a ledge one afternoon when I just wanted to throw it all in and say the heck with it. So it was, the universe giving me support, and then it was my first ex-husband. Even though, we're not at all romantically linked anymore, we are still each other's best friends.
That's important. That's wonderful. Good for you on that. And for listening to that dream and that voice and yourself. I mean, that deep, deep part of you coming out, telling you in your sleep, don't take this. It's time for you to take a big move and move on. So you called the police to understand, because I think, that's an important point, that if you are in a position like that, you may not know how would you know where to go and what to do? Were you Googling information, or did you just think the first resource, I'm going to the department in my community that is supposed to defend and serve people? So I don't know what to do.
That's what I did. Was when I woke up that morning, I went down to the police station, which was 5 minutes from my house, and expected that they would put me in a room and talk to me. And the lady actually at the front office said, no, you actually have to have them come out to your house because they need to check things out. Okay. And that second ex-husband, he was at work at the time. He oddly enough worked he still does, at a detention facility for teenage boys before they go to big boy jail. That's where they stop over. So interesting.
Yeah.
So then I went home and waited about an hour, and 5 police officers showed up. I was going, this is cool, but also slightly excessive. So I felt very safe in my home at that point. So that's what I did. And they questioned me the same questions about 3 times in a row. I think just to make sure that my story was what I said it was. So I think that they try to be fair to both sides in that case, since, my second ex was not there to defend himself, which I understand completely.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's incredible. And again, thank you for sharing that, because I think that often we find ourselves in a situation where we don't know what our options are, so we just don't do anything. And sometimes that inner voice isn't as loud as it could be, or we're just not tuning into it. We don't want to hear it. So that's, your move is incredible. So then you were out of there, and then what?
So, I got the restraining order for a month, and then we got it made permanent. And then I was working with my lawyer as a divorce lawyer, because my ex decided to get himself one once he got served the restraining order papers while he was at work. So then it was a month later, and my family, when I divorced my first ex-husband, my family disowned me. My mother said that I was a terrible wife and a horrible mother, and I was abandoning my family, even though she didn't know the whole story. And my first ex and I were telling everybody afterward. We told people about the divorce afterward, because we didn't want anyone to take sides. We said there are no sides to take, but people do it anyway. So
yeah, they do.
My family decided that, I was not worthy of their attention anymore, which was very painful at the beginning, because I had no support other than my first ex. Well, actually, with that divorce, I had no support at all, which is what led me into the marriage with the second man. So this time around, I at least had the support of, my first ex, and I had friends that I had met, that I worked with. I'm a dolphin energy healing practitioner. It's energy medicine work, and they were my instructors for it. And I had never met them in person, but I had spent about a year working with them online with these energy transmissions, if you will. And we became very, very close. It's a couple, and they invited me to come live with them near Sedona in a room in their house, rent-free, so that I could get back on my feet while I waited to get money that had actually been stolen from me by someone posing as a financial advisor. And I had the SEC on it, but they said it would take a while if they could get it back at all.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's what I did. Was I moved from Colorado, and this was in April of 2018. I moved down to the Sedona area and lived there for 9 months.
Phoenix in Arizona, that sounds perfect.
and that's where I chose my last name, was when the divorce was finalized that September. So I moved down there in April, and then the divorce was finalized in September, and I filed in February of 2018. They said on the paperwork, what do you want your name to be? And they said they can change it to anything. And I did not want it to be my maiden name, because my stepfather was an abusive alcoholic. And I thought maybe I could take my first husband's last name, so I have the same last name as my son. But then for some reason, again, my intuition was like, no, choose your own last name. So I was at a retreat that the people I was living with held in Sedona. And while I was there, they said we could write any name we wanted on a name tag. And for some reason, because I'd been talking with the people at the retreat and everything, Dawn Phoenix came up. And so I tried it on all weekend, and everybody loved it. And so it stuck. And that's the name that I chose for myself, because as women, we're born into someone else's last name. We don't get to choose our own last names. So this is a gift,
baby, at its finest. Awesome. No, that's fantastic. I actually did not know that from all of the conversations we've had before, that you chose that name. That's incredible. And good for you. You are creating your life on your terms. That's incredible. So with your family, when in your first divorce, when your family disowned you, did you anticipate that at all? You mentioned that you and your first husband kept everything quiet until it was over. It was a total surprise.
I didn't see it coming at all. My mother, it surprised me less than everybody else because she is very lost in victimhood, and I love her and I send her love every day. But she is unfortunately in so much pain about things that have happened in her life that she judges people very harshly because she judges herself harshly. And so I fell, into that in her lifetime. So that was not such a big surprise, but it was very painful and it was sudden. I tell her I'm on the phone and then she just goes silent. And I'm like, do you need some time to talk about this? And she just said, yeah. And I said, all right, I'll let you get back to me when you would like to. And it's been 6 years now. No, 4 years. We're in 2020. It's been 4 years now. And yeah, so and the rest of my family just followed suit. I have a small family, but they followed suit.
Sure.
So, except for my grandmother, who's wonderful and amazing, and has said, Annie, she calls me Annie because that was her grandmother's nickname for her. So that's what she calls me. I asked her that one day. I said, Grandma, call me Annie.
You do know my name's not Annie, right?
I'm like, great. But she said, and she said, you've always been different, but I love you anyway. So she's able to do that, whereas the rest of my family, they just can't. So it's freeing now because I get to live my life 100% on my own terms and not have to worry about who I'm pissing off or who I'm letting down, because I'm only here for me, not in a selfish way, but in a self-full way, to be here for me.
Self-full, yes. Because when you are self-full, you are fulfilling out in the universe. That's amazing. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
And to have, and it's so important to have that. It's beautiful to hear you speak to a circumstance that I think a lot of people find themselves in, where there are people that surprise them, that hurt their feelings and shock them by their response to the divorce that they go through. And divorce is painful enough on your own, and then you're dealing with the added loss of these other people. So to hear you speak with such perspective that is very much of the what is of where it is, and it does not affect you, because I always like to say, what other people think about me is none of my business. I did not make that up.
Yes, I say that too, and it's true.
I love that phrase. It's so empowering, and you're an embodiment of that. That's awesome. So you were doing hypnotherapy, and you were working to launch that business, and then going through all of the changes. How were you able to, and if you just want to speak a little bit to the idea of getting yourself on your feet, being independent when your first marriage ended and you found yourself in this situation you weren't prepared for, and then the security of the second marriage that turned into a complete disaster for you and such a challenge. How were you able to move on and continue working on doing something for yourself? What choices were you making there?
Well, I got lucky because, are you talking like financially?
Or just financially, and the decisions you were making, the things that you wanted to do. I think a lot of times, we can end up doing things because we feel like this is what I need to do to get by right now.
Yeah.
But it's nothing that you want to be doing. And then also following, what do you want to be doing, and how do you, I'd love to hear about what choices you were making, because you very much were in a spot where you could have made any kinds of decisions because you were kind of starting from zero, right?
Right. Yeah. New place, new everything, So when I was in Arizona, I was getting a little bit of money as spousal support. But I then learned I would not be, once the divorce was finalized, I would not be eligible. This was a shock that came to me, that I learned that I would not be eligible for alimony because the marriage was only 1.5 years long. And then by the time the divorce was finalized, it was about 2.5 years, maybe. And you have to be married for 3 years minimum to get alimony in Colorado, regardless of the circumstances. So I did not have alimony to fall back on. So I realized I have to do whatever it takes to start getting some money in the bank, because I may never see that money that was taken from me again. And it was a pretty substantial amount. So I took jobs that I was overqualified for, but I needed the money. So I first started out being a home health care aide for people because I am by nature a caretaker. And the pay was pretty good, but I realized it was emotionally and energetically sapping me. So after a couple months of doing that, and one of the women who I was working with in her home was a very entitled person and actually took it so far as to physically put her hands on me and say things to me and shake me. And I was just like, okay, this isn't going to happen again. So I let the employer know. And shortly after that, I, stopped working with that company, and I got a job at the Humane Society in that town I was living in. And I loved being there with the animals because I am an animal person. But it was sometimes 10, 11-hour days. So, and some days it was 6 days a week because they had such low staff count. I was working at the front desk, and I also volunteered there to play in the courtyard with the dogs because I love them so much. So that was literally my life, was the Humane Society. And that's where I was working up until I decided this is not the place for me. My energy again was telling me, you need to move. So I just visited my old roommate from college who lives in Asheville, North Carolina, thinking maybe I'll move there, when I get my money. And I went to visit her, and it actually turned out that the Outer Banks was the place for me. It's along the coast. So I did end up getting the money back, and
Victory.
It was beautiful. That changed my life. It was that the universe brought to me what was mine, and it was at the perfect time. So instead of moving to Asheville, I drove across country, and it took 10 days from Arizona to the Outer Banks, which is way out on the coast of North Carolina. And I stopped up where my son and ex-husband live and stayed with them for a few days to give myself a break from being on the road. Because driving cross country in January is probably not the wisest thing for me to do. But the roommate situation that I was having had dwindled to not being very enjoyable anymore. So I needed to get out of there. And so I did. And that's how I landed in the Outer Banks. And then I worked there, either cleaning rental properties because it's a high tourism area and there's really not room for anything else. My business didn't have room there really. And I did some sessions with people with dolphin energy healing or hypnotherapy. But mostly I just had to do the menial work. And so I either would clean, or I found a wonderful job for the season, the tourist season, at a horse tour company that would take people out in Hummers to go visit the feral horses who live on the beaches in a town called Kerala. And it was beautiful because that's actually, I wrote my first book about those horses. So that was wonderful. And I lived there for about a year, and got up enough money where I could at least pay my rent, which is very high out there with that job at the tour company. And then 3 weeks before my lease was up at the townhouse where I was renting, they told me that the owner was moving in and I had to be out, and I had 3 weeks. And so
less than you thought you had, huh?
Yes. And I was like, okay, the horse tour company job had told me they weren't hiring me back because they were downsizing for the summer. And so this is January of 2019. And I was like, that's interesting. Okay. I think it was January. I'm horrible with dates, but basically what ended up happening was I ended up coming down to visit Savannah in February of 2020. And for a weekend, because a friend of mine said, hey, check out Savannah. It's cheap and they have apartments there and there's work. Okay. So I came and visited for a weekend. The weather was awful. I didn't get to see too much, but I said, it's a place. Checked out an apartment, signed a lease, and found a part-time job that I could do, again, cleaning, which is fine because it's money, it's good money. And I could work part-time and then hopefully get my business up and running, off on the side. So I moved down here March 31st of 2020 while we were on lockdown. And I really haven't left my apartment since. So that's how I ended up in Savannah.
Wow. What a journey. And I love that you haven't given up on what you want to do,
Mm-mm.
what you're driven by, in spite of things that some may call challenges, the things that are taking you down the twists and turns of the road. You are figuring it out and following your intuition, which
Mm-hmm.
is awesome. Awesome.
If you follow your heart, you'll never go wrong. And that's what we need to understand.
You got to listen to it. You've got to be able to listen to it and actually be open to hearing what it's saying. And that's a tricky part. It's a skill that we aren't taught. No one teaches you how to listen to yourself. And that's, I think, where so many of us get in trouble, because we're listening to a lot of other noise that isn't serving.
Exactly.
So the biggest thing of all of this stuff that you have shared with me already that I think is so important to share, because your story aligns with so many women in any of the aspects that you just talked about. And you mentioned your son.
Mm-hmm.
So you and your first husband have a son.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me about the amazing gift, the amazing choice that you made in the process of your divorce regarding your son.
Okay, so my son at the time we divorced was 8 years old. And my first husband and I had to make the decision, we chose to make the decision for him to stay in one household, to be brought up in one household and not split him between two. And we made that decision because it was what was best emotionally, and just, I have a master's of teaching, and I used to be an elementary school teacher. So I'm very sensitive to children and their development, physically, emotionally, mentally. And my first ex-husband is in the military, and he moves all over every 3 years. That was my life while we were together. And we did not know where he would be stationed next when it wasn't Colorado Springs. And I had no idea where I would be living when we divorced, since I hadn't had a place to land yet. So we decided, we knew what our son would say, but we decided to let him choose who he wanted to live with, let him have a say in the matter. And he chose his dad because they are so alike. They are, when we were married, it was mom and the boys. Boys pick up your Legos, boys wash your hands for dinner. And it was cute, but also it was exhausting because I was the caretaker and dad was the playmate, and I was the bad cop and the good cop. And my husband at the time was not a parent, just a playmate. And that was really hard on me. And it made an impact on my relationship with my son, where we started to not get along at all. It was very bad. And I put him into counseling, and I would see the counselor also, just so that we could try to maintain a semblance, of civility in the household. And I don't understand why the universe makes a mother and her son like oil and water, but we loved each other. It would just be when I would say something to him, his will was so strong that even if he knew the sky was blue, he would say it was green because I said it was blue. And we were not able to work through that. It was just part of the dynamic. And so with everything going on with my husband at the time and my son, that when the divorce occurred, when my son said, yes, I want to go live with dad, it wasn't shocking, but it was also a relief, because I knew financially I would not be able to provide for him the life his father could, but also emotionally, because we were always at odds. So since then, I have never looked back. At the beginning, I would cry when I would go over there for dinner once a week, and I would tuck him into bed, and I would literally hold him and just cry all over him. And he would just stroke my hair and say, Mama, you're a good mom. And I said, honey, even though I'm leaving you? And he said, you're a good mama because you're leaving me. You're doing what you need to do and what I need to do. And it's what's best for everybody. I need to be happy and you need to be happy. And this wisdom from an 8-year-old,
his little wise heart, yeah,
slammed into me. So it made me feel better knowing that even at his 8-year-old age, he understood
and
that I was not abandoning
from the
him.
heart. They tell you exactly what they're thinking. So that's exactly what you needed to hear that, and to know that that's really where he was coming from.
Yeah.
That's Dawn, that is so incredible. I mean, as I think about as a mother who has a 9 and an 11-year-old, and now I've gotten used to the routine of going back and forth because we are in the 2-household world, which is kind of the I guess norm, the common thing that happens, and just the feeling that I have, especially at the beginning, like you said, when you used to cry and now you've settled in. Every time I would release them, there was this weird feeling in this sense, and I so relate to that, and I so respect and admire the brilliance that you and your first husband have to not care about what's the norm and be burdened by trying to fit something for something that doesn't really fit for your lives. You both understood what was best for you as individuals, and most importantly, that is what feeds into what was best for him, for your son. And that's awesome. And not caring about the opinions of how many, did you get any kind of like strange comments? You didn't have to worry about your family, right? Because they weren't speaking to you. Sorry to laugh.
His friends who we've known since college, that's where we met.
Yeah.
College. They stopped talking to me. So people who were at our wedding and were, you know, his groomsmen, chose to stop talking to me. So I didn't so much get comments as I did silence.
Silent judgment. Ooh, we all know the silent judgment.
Which, you know, is almost more painful because there's no closure.
Yeah.
And that was just the way it was. But then I understood, you know, I was like, I don't care. The only person I care about judging me is my son. And if his opinion is that I did the right thing and he feels better, I had him in therapy when we divorced, until the therapist 3 weeks later said to me, Dawn, he loves you, but he doesn't need therapy because just the relief of the tension being lifted in the house with you gone is enough for him. He's fine. And so that made me feel better, that he didn't need therapy and he wasn't suffering, you know, the effects that children often do. I'm a child of a twice divorced mother, so I understand those effects. So he didn't have those, thank God. So that's all I cared about was his opinion. Everybody else could go scratch.
Yeah.
Because I know what's best for him, nobody else.
Yeah. That's so true. And our own ego, your ego didn't get in the way of that. And again, being burdened by the thoughts and opinions of what other people may or may not think. And I think this is like the second or third time I've used the word empowering in the way that you are presenting yourself and how your choices in the journey to reinvent your life. You show that it's not always doing what might be the obvious thing that everyone else does, following that path. You really have to listen and go forth knowing that you are doing what is best for you. And that's best for the people around you too, if you're truly doing that in its full intention. So that's awesome. Awesome. So what are you doing now? You are a dolphin energy healer, a hypnotherapist. And is there anything else in your repertoire that you're working on?
Well, I'm also a certified animal communicator because I am also a healing touch for animals practitioner. And so that's energy medicine where it works with animals, but it can also work on people, some of the techniques. So I started doing that before the dolphin energy healing. So as part of that, I wanted to be able to communicate with the animals I was treating to find out how they were feeling and all that good stuff. And some people, you know, believe in this kind of a thing, and some people think it's hooey, and it's fine because everybody's on their path, you know, and whatever resonates for everybody is perfect. There's not one big truth that is only exclusive, you know, to everybody. We all come from truth, and we're all different variations of truth. So I don't want anybody thinking I'm trying to, you know, make anybody think anything. But for me, this is what's true for me. So I did learn and became a certified animal communicator, and that's how I wrote my first book called The Star Horses of Kerala. And that was in January of last year while I was in the Outer Banks to find out where those horses came from, because the horses were not indigenous to the beaches in Corolla, North Carolina. People thought they were Spanish Mustangs, but no one really knew for sure. So I decided to ask them their origin story, and actually a very powerful message for children came through, that the horses had to tell children, you are leaders and you are not going to grow into leaders. You are leaders now, to show the world what the way it needs to be by you leading and being true to your hearts. And so, of course, I loved that message. And so I published that book. And I just got done teaching an online course for children. It was called Animal Communication Basics for Kids. And it was a month-long course. And it was such a beautiful, I got the gift from my student.
That's the best.
Yes. Yes. So everything I do now is just distance work, which is great. I get to work from home. And my latest project is I'm going to be creating the Healer's Rest Stop to help other energy medicine workers, other therapists, sound healers, people, massage therapists who give in their work. But very often we let our own self-care fall by the wayside and we become depleted. And that affects us energetically, but then it will have a physical effect on us eventually where we become ill. So I want to create basically a resource of my gifts and other gifts of other healers where we become healers and help them refill their cups, because at this time in the world, we need healing. The world needs healing, and it's calling on us. Those of us, who answer that call, it pulls greatly from our resources and our own energy reserves. So it is my deepest calling to give back to those who give to others, because who heals the healers?
Oh, amazing. And such the question that often is not asked. So that's brilliant. Oh, I love how everything just is tied together, and it all is very much your calling, what you love and what you're doing. It's beautiful. So how can people find you if they are interested in reading about the Star Horses of Corolla, or learning more about the animal communication, dolphin energy healing, or the Healer's Rest Stop that you're creating?
Sure. So I actually have two websites. The first one is my main website, and that has the hypnotherapy information on it, the animal communication information on it, and the dolphin energy healing on it. And that is, so it's Dawn's, and then there's a hyphen, light, and a hyphen, house.com. Because Dawn's Lighthouse, all one word, was taken, so I put the hyphens in.
That Dawn, that other Dawn, darn Dawn.
Right. And I have a little free gift there for people. I'm not going to tell what it is, but it has to do with the dolphins. Ooh. So there's a little free gift there. And my second website is my newest one, and that one's shorter. The name is dolphindawn.net. Oh, nice. And that website is all about the dolphins helping people to heal and create nurturing relationships in their lives. See, because dolphins, the way they live are, in their pods, and they don't argue and fight and all that. And even just scientifically, when you look at the social structure of dolphins, it's basically perfect. And so I use that template and my hypnotherapy techniques and channel a message from the dolphins for people who want to work with me to improve their coworkers or their relationships with their loved ones, whether it's romantic or family bonds, to bring in that dolphin energy of the pod existence and to open up and to be unconditionally loving, even when that means letting go of something that you need to let go, because that's how you show yourself and the others love.
What a great example. Dolphins are incredible. And taking that and applying that into how we as humans can interact is fascinating. And on top of that, I think, so many people love dolphins, and dolphins are, their emblem, their spirit animal, their symbol. And it is undeniable to me, being in the presence of a dolphin in its natural habitat does something to you. You feel that energy that they have that is just, I have chills just thinking about it. Just the experiences that I have had out in the wild when the dolphins have come up in their pods. Oh my, I mean, there's the joy and the expression that you have when you see them, but there is something else about that. So that is, the connection is super cool. So I hope people will go and learn more and check that out, because I think that is amazing. Do you have an email or social media or anything like that as well? Or is everything on your website?
Yeah, no, my email is dawnslighthouse2014@gmail.com. And I'm also not very active, but I have posted things on Instagram, Dawn's Lighthouse, on Instagram. And then also I have a Facebook page known, and I go by Dawn's Lighthouse. And the most recent thing that I have done is created a YouTube channel, also by the name of Dawn's Lighthouse. And it's the same logo that you see on my website. And that has channeled messages that I have channeled from the dolphins and other beings who have something to say to humanity to support us as we rise in our ascension and evolution.
Very cool. Very cool. I hope people go and check out and learn more, because you're doing some really cool, interesting stuff. And more, and in addition to that, you have created this opportunity to share with the women. I know that the women who need to hear your story are going to stumble upon this, and what you have shared today will speak to them and will show them that they can have the courage to get the resources to find their way out of domestic violence in their relationship, to carry on and follow their intuition, to do what they want to do, to be who they are in their full authenticity without being burdened by the things that maybe the expectations that may be holding them back. You've done such an amazing job of just living those really beautiful messages. And I think we said at the beginning, you were sending me heat, you were sending me warmth through the screen, and I'm feeling it, my friend. It's fabulous. Thank you so much for being here today, Dawn.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Real RAD Women. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell notification so you will get an update every time a new episode is released. We'll see you soon, and in the meantime, stay rad.